First item would be to consider approval of the minutes of the council meeting of February 11th. Those minutes were available for your review on the board pack prior to the meeting this evening. Any questions or comments on the minutes as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Kissling to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Second by Ware. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Claims were also available for review this evening before the meeting. Any questions or comments on the claims as presented?
I'd make a motion to approve as accepted.
Motion by McFerrin to approve the claims. Second by Dubon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have for your consideration a resolution to transfer funds from the electric utility and the natural gas utility reserve fund. This is an annual consideration. Tom, any comments?
Just these were put in the budget as income items, along with a $50,000 from the water. But since we have an SRF loan through the water, until our loan from the electric cash reserve fund gets paid back, we can't make any transfers.
So this would be resolution 2020
2020-06.
06. Any questions from the council on the resolution? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve resolution number 2020-06, authorizing the transfer of surplus earnings from the electric and natural gas utilities to the general fund of the city of Huntingburg?
So moved.
Motion by Kissling,
I'll second it.
second by McFerrin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Do you have a copy of that one?
Yeah,
Okay. So I think that one needs to be signed by everybody.
right. Next item on the agenda would be a discussion of the blight clearance program. This is a program that is offered through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, a program that's been around since I think 2018, but recently it's been expanded to include commercial properties. This has been a program that's been used for residential programs across the state on a regular basis, but now it is available for commercial properties as well. And Lisa Gelhausen from Indiana Region 15 is here this evening. I know the council in our Main Street corridor plan, one of the properties that was addressed in that was the former Dairyland property at 802 Main, as a property that would be something that we would like to see as a property that would be possibly cleaned up and rehabilitated. And we began a discussion with the owners of that property about this program, and had a very good meeting with Mr. Taylor and his folks earlier this month to discuss the details of what this program might hold for them and this possibility. Lisa was at that meeting, and I've asked her to come tonight and kind of address the council, kind of walk through what the steps are and how we might move from this point forward. So.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. I would like to start off with Indiana 15 prepares a comprehensive economic development strategy, and there are 3 pages of projects in Du Bois County. And they're divided by economic development, infrastructure, transportation, planning, community facilities, and public safety. So We update this plan every April, and if you can take some time to, at your leisure, maybe in the next couple weeks, if you see any changes that you'd like to make, whether projects are completed or there's something that's not listed that you'd like to have added, we'd love to hear from you about these. There is, being in a regional plan, if you were to go after U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development funds, or even Okra funds, if it's in a regional plan, you either get eligibility or you get bonus points. So it is important to list your future projects in this strategy. So, but if you get time, please let us know if there's any changes.
What's the deadline to do that?
End of March. And then, as the mayor said, I'm here to talk to you about the potential for a Huntingburg clearance project through the Indiana Office of Community and Rural Affairs. There's a grant program called Blight Clearance. You can apply for up to $500,000 to eliminate blight, and there's a minimum of 10% match. Now, before you is a draft timeline, so I'd kind of like to go through that. The first thing is to procure somebody to do a phase 1 environmental assessment. And those, there were 3 letters that were sent out a few weeks ago asking for cost proposals to do that phase 1. And they were due yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock, so those have been submitted. And what a phase 1 will do is, after it's done, it provides a comfort letter to the city of Huntingburg, basically stating that Huntingburg is not responsible for any contamination that may or may not be on that site. So the phase 1, that's step 1. Then after the environmental consultant is chosen, we need to get a site access agreement from the owner of the property to let that environmental consultant on the property. So that would be step 2. But we don't know who that environmental consultant is yet. Then the environmental consultant works on the phase 1, and then we submit this comfort letter request to IDEM. And that could take like 120 days to get that comfort letter. Then we talk to getting a cost estimate so we know what the demolition and remediation costs could be. And then we can proceed down certain steps to acquire that property. The grant funds that I mentioned before allow for acquisition and demolition and clearance. So we need to go through certain steps that Okra approves and how you can purchase property, but you have a willing seller. There is a for sale sign at that site. So you don't have to go through the whole Uniform Relocation Act, but there are certain steps that need to be followed. And the first step would be a 50-year title search, just to make sure that who really does own that property. And actually, the 50-year title search is a part of that phase 1 environmental study that I mentioned earlier. So that is one of the asterisks on your timeline. The next one is we just need to make sure we follow the acquisition checklist. And there's a questionnaire about how the property's used that would need to be filled out. And then there's an appraisal that needs to be done. And then once you get the appraisal, you can get an option from the owner, but you don't want to purchase it at this time. If you get an option, then you can say the option is contingent upon getting this clearance grant. So if you get an option, then you're not really buying it until you know you're going to get the acquisition and clearance dollars from Okra. And then we go through the application. If you're awarded, then we final design. You do have to work with an engineer, an architect, to remove the blight. You will, before the application goes in, you'll have to actually pass a resolution that you are declaring that site blighted to be eligible for these funds. And then there's a local match of the 10% that before the application goes in, you would have to pass a resolution of where that could come from. If you openly procure for a grant administrator, and if you openly procure for an architect or engineer, we can include those costs into the total project cost as well. And then the architectural design is complete, and we have the design and what is going to happen on that property, and then you go out for bids, and then you remove like the awning and any kind of what you have to do is keep that property open space for a period of 5 years after the certificate of completion. Unless you do some kind of eligible activity that OKRA allows, such as they allow like fire stations and daycares and senior centers and things like that. Not that that site is feasible for those. So really, the best thing is just to keep it open space for a period of 5 years after the certificate of completion. But when we go in with the application, the OKRA does want to kind of have an idea of what you may want to use it for. Like, is it going to be, green space and open? They kind of want to know what your ideas might be for that. But it's a two-step process. We submit a proposal, and then we have a site public hearing before that proposal, and then it triggers a site visit by OKRA, and then we submit the application. And then you approve, then you'd sign a grant agreement, and then we have to finish, before you can transfer the property from the owner to the city of Huntingburg, we'd have to have environmental clearance. You cannot transfer the property before that. And then we basically advertise for bids, award a contract for demolition. Davis-Bacon wage rates do not apply on demolition projects, but they do apply for if there's any asbestos removal as a part of the project. So if there's anything like that, Davis-Bacon kicks in for just part of the project, but for demolition cost, it does not apply. So as you can see, this is going to take some time. We're going to probably be, if everything goes according to the steps here, it could be the end of 2021 before we see the project done. And I've attached a picture, or given you all a picture of the property, just to, I'm sure you're all aware of which one it is.
Do we know the site size, the acreage, and probably not some acreage?
There's multiple parcels. There's a couple of triangle pieces, and there is a couple of rectangular pieces, so that it's about 4 parcels. I'm not sure what the total is, but and it's more than just the one awning, and there's another building on the site as well.
Does it include both buildings as well, the entire property?
Entire
3 buildings, right?
piece.
Is it
Yeah.
3 buildings?
Yeah, there's 3 in there. There's a
Like-
shed behind there.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of make you aware of the process, and then just asking what your thoughts are about moving forward.
I think it's been a long time. People have been talking about that building. And it looks like it's disarray or abandoned, in my opinion, but
I would be in favor of it if we can secure funds potentially to secure funds to do this, and we have a willing owner, current owner. I mean, that's a big thing for me. If you have a willing owner wanting to sell, we're not you know, we're not forcing, he's looking to move the property in some form or fashion anyway.
There is a initial cost of that phase one. That is outside of the 10% grant match, so
The environmental.
that's probably step one to start on that, is to get approval to begin with that phase one environmental assessment.
So as Lisa mentioned, we had sent letters to 3 firms who do this type of work, asking them for a quote to do that environmental assessment, and we received 3 letters back, 3 proposals back, and those proposals are there in your packet. The 3 responses were from Sesco Group out of Indianapolis, from Environmental Management, and from ATC. The packets that were opened, Sesco's quote was for $3,520. The Environmental Management quote was $2,000, and ATC was a quote of $1,800. And I know these are all firms that you have had experience in doing this type of work, so any of these firms would be capable of
Yes.
creating the document. Again, the things that we're looking for is the environmental assessment and the comfort letter and the third.
And getting quotes, trying to help us with quotes to what will the future demolition costs look like. We really don't know at this point in time.
Would the city be contracting the demolition people? I mean, we
Yes.
would have the contract with
Yes.
the demolition people. Okay.
The grant would be through the city, yes.
Yeah.
If we would get the grant money.
We gotta get the grant money, I guess.
If we get the grant money and we started this project and we get into the environmental, it's gonna cost more than what we're allotted, what happens then?
Before we go into with the grant,
We would know.
we should know what those costs are before you go in. If we see it's going to be really expensive, way over the $500,000 maximum, then you've got some other decisions maybe to make.
Would the 500,000 include the purchase price?
Yes.
Yes.
So if we need to make a choice on this and hire one of these firms, I guess that money we have through the economic development, or?
We could take it out of council budget, or from, there's a number of sources that we could take it from, depending on, you know, the amount is $1,800. There's contractual money available in a number of different areas. One would be, you know,
Is there a sizable difference in we had 3 different quotes for 3 different amounts. Is it the work essentially the same?
yes.
The finished product from each one of the companies will be the same?
Yes.
Of the 2 low ones, the 2,000 and 1,800, we've had good results with both. I mean,
Yes, I've worked with all 3 of those firms. They're all good.
Okay.
So if the council is wishing to move on this, I would recommend that, you know, they receive the quote, the low quote from ATC in the amount of $1,800 if the council would like to proceed with this process.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Kissling, seconded by Ware. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we'll start that process, and we'll just keep step by step by step and keep coming back and, you know, ask for more decisions as we move forward, but that is the first step.
So after the 5 years, if somebody wants to purchase the property, did the city get the money, or how does that?
That's a great
Does it
question.
go back to you guys?
No, let's say somebody wants to buy it in year 4, then you have to pay back a fifth of those grant funds back to Okra because you didn't wait the whole 5 years.
Prorated.
It's prorated. But if you were to wait the whole 5 years, then the city can do what you want to after those 5 years.
We've completed our contract.
You've completed your obligations with Okra.
Yeah, okay.
5 years isn't that long if you
No.
think about how long it's been sitting there.
Been close.
Do you have a sense as to whether or not having an immediate community use for that property or development potential puts you in a better light or a better stance to get the grant?
Not necessarily. Many of them are open space.
Okay.
And, you know, part of the next meeting, we'll be talking about our comprehensive plan. And I think that there are some, that was something that was identified in the comprehensive plan as well, that would be the council would, if this were an available property, what are the options that we might want to consider? And that, that's part of the decision this board would make is, part of our development of that whole corridor, what might be the most appropriate use, and even if it's green space, for a while, allow us to make the proper decisions on what, whether it's something we want to keep and use as a public facility or offer for development in the future. So again, if everything goes according to the plan, that we would have adequate time to make the right decision on how that might be developed.
It would be attractive. It would be attractive real estate, in my opinion, once the environmental has been identified and managed and everything the site is ready for something.
In all likelihood, there could be some deed restrictions. There'll be some things that as you move forward through the environmental that you probably can't put on that site. But in the end, it'll say it there'll be some restrictions on the deed.
Okay.
But, yeah, but there'll be some attractive uses, I agree.
Any questions for Lisa? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help. Introduce Superintendent Rudipolar.
Evening, council.
Hi, John.
Start off with the gas. Installed one service this month, still have 8 on file. When the contractors are ready, that was Hunter's Crossing, installed it a couple weeks ago. Crews continue to work on checking and operating their critical valves on the main lines and some of the tap lines, just to make sure they're free and clear of debris in the pits and they're operating correctly. Then they started working on the regulator station lockout inspections. We have 30 regulator stations, and basically what that is these regulator stations reduces the pressure. They call them Moonies. There's 2 Moonies on there. One of the Moonies reduces the pressure to a certain level. Then there's a backup. They call it a monitor Moonie. It monitors the other Moonie to make sure it's working correctly. So what we do, we go in and start adjusting the pressure up a little bit on the working Moonie to see if that other Moonie sees that that's starting to fail, so it kicks in. So that's how we test the regulator stations. So we're in the process of doing that, which is mandated by PHMSA. And then Greg and David Kissling been working with Machine Works on the water main project whenever they're crossing our gas mains or services, just make sure everything goes smooth there, and so far it has. I think they got several blocks done on the boring, so it's been going good. And say we need to have somebody there to make sure if they have any questions we can answer it right there. If you look at the natural gas charts, as you know, it's been kind of warm January and February. As you can see, our cost for January is 34.8% lower than last year in January. Along with our revenue, it's down 28% over last year in January. And that trend will probably continue in February, and the cost of natural gas should stay relatively low for the remainder of 2020. The virus that's spreading around, some of these bigger companies, they export a lot of liquid natural gas to China, and with the virus going around, they've cut back probably half of their exports of liquid natural gas. So that is kind of flooding the market. So that's keeping costs down and driving it even lower. So look for them trends to continue. And once the virus is contained and taken care of, the exports of liquid natural gas probably go back up to normal. But that is kind of flooding the market right now. That's about it for the gas. Anybody have any questions?
I'd just like to thank you and all the other pipeline people that had the training session in Huntingburg for
Yeah.
about the 5th year in a row, and thank you for bringing all that to Huntingburg. That's, what do we have, about 500 people?
Yeah. It's,
500 people were being trained by all the pipeline operators on how to respond to gas, so
it's well attended, and
thank you for doing that.
thank you. You're welcome. It's, like I said, it's a good venue every year. They like coming to Huntingburg because we got nice facilities to hold that many people. And that covers, I think, Du Bois, Spencer, Pike, several counties.
Yes.
So that's a big plus.
Questions for the gas?
Other questions for the gas?
Okay. Electric?
Electric crews, they shut down West First for a couple days with the help of the street department. It's getting pretty, lines are getting pretty covered with limbs and leaves, so we basically had to shut the road down with the hills and the valleys. So we went in there and trimmed around the lines. We did find one rotten pole in there we're gonna have to replace in the next week or two. And then coming around the bend, I think where the Judy Olinger property, we're going to transfer that electric line across the street to get it out of the woods. So we're going to set a few poles there. So we'll be working on that. Some of the crews have been going over our system and checking our pad mount transformers, opening the transformers up to make sure the wires aren't starting to fail. Make sure everything's the way it needs to be in there. And then years ago, we didn't put any arresters on our pad mount transformers, but now we do. So while they open them up and inspecting the inside, they're adding elbow arresters to the transformers. That helps protect them against lightning surges to save the transformer. So they've been working on it, put 25 arresters so far. And the crews installed all the conduit for wagon works. Actually, they poured the pads yesterday, so we're pulling wire in today. And they want electric in the first 2 buildings probably next week, so we will be working on terminating the ends of the wire, setting transformers. We got our transformers in yesterday. Like I said, they pulled wire today, so they're going to be working over there for the next week, getting that all ready. And whenever they get the wagon works done, they'll be continue set poles on County Road 200 West. That's an ongoing project for the next few years. With that in mind, I have a quote for 60 40-foot wooden poles. We got a quote from 3 companies. The preferred company we'd like to try is from Brown Equipment for $21,660. It is $45 more than Thomason. The reason being, the last load we got from Thomason, the holes weren't drilled straight at the top of the pole, so when we set it, we put our cross arms on there. They're hard to line up straight. So we would like to try the Brown company.
Purchased from them in the past too?
Yeah, we purchased them years ago, but the last 2 sets of poles we got was from Thomason, and they've been kind of sloppy on when they drill the holes at the top, so we'd really like to try the Brown.
I'm familiar with the Brown Company. They're a good company. So.
I mean, $45 over that amount is very minimal, I think.
Motion.
I'd make that recommendation. Go ahead and purchase the poles from Brown Wood Preserving.
For $21,660.
Great.
Motion by Kissling, second by McFerrin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Then we sent quotes out for bid for the SCADA system. We hired IMPA to kind of do the engineering work on it. They sent out quotes to 6 companies. Come down, they took some readings, took some pictures, sent out the quotes. We had a bid opening set for next week on Thursday, and with bringing it to the council in the end of March. I got a call today from IMPA. Some of the vendors, they want an extension on the bid opening. They want to come down and kind of look our system over. They don't feel that timeline is giving them enough time to correctly review the bids or make the bids out. So they asked for an extension, so we extended it to April 2nd, the bid openings, and then bring it to the council probably the end of April for consideration for approval. I figured that would be well worth the extra wait because I want to make sure we get it right with the specs on that amount of money.
How much money is it, you estimate?
Probably 100,000. That would be my guess. So we will be bringing that to council in April.
I think that's worth waiting.
Yeah. So for that amount of money, I want to make sure we get it right. We don't miss anything. I don't want to rush anybody. Then this last week, I found out we got a search for a new substation maintenance company. We did have MPM. They've been doing our maintenance for probably 10 years, 10 or so years. It was about time for our transformer oil testing, so I had Rich call the company up and see when they're going to be up to test the oil. And they informed me that they've been bought out. They were bought out probably in this summer. They want to know if that new company got a hold of us. I said, we haven't heard from the new company, but they sold out. They moved to Florida. He started up another transformer testing, but he's not allowed to come up in Indiana due to the new buyout. So we're in search of a new company. I got a meeting tomorrow with a company from Evansville. I called IMPA, kind of got some of their information. They used to test substations. They don't anymore. The guy they had in charge of testing substations left for another company. They didn't rehire anybody, and they sold off all their equipment. But he did give me 3 companies that do substation testing. They're all in Indianapolis area. One's in Carmel, 2's in Indianapolis. But I do have one in Evansville. And actually the person that's kind of in charge of substation testing is from Southridge. I know him. So we got a meeting with him tomorrow. I want to go over what our testing consists of. I'll be getting in contact with some of them companies from Indianapolis to see what their rates are going to be. But it is vital we get our transformers tested, oil tested.
What's the timeline on that, John? When do they have to have that test done by?
It's recommended every year, year and a half. They got to test the main tank and the load tap changer. They pull oil samples off, send them off to get it tested for the internal gases, if there's any internal gases in there, moisture. They've run the whole gamut on it.
So when was the last time they were tested?
It's been about a year and a half. That's why I had them call up. But then found out they were sold out. So, like I say, I got a meeting tomorrow with one of the companies. So hopefully get that corrected or get it signed.
I think the last time we inspected it, we found some issues or something.
Yeah. Well, I
Minor issue.
think moisture.
Yeah.
All the oil had to be pulled out, dried, vacuumed, put it back in, degassed. Because I think there was a little gas problem in there. But we do keep a positive nitrogen level on there. That helps keep out the moisture. So we've been keeping an eye on it. And then I'd like to declare some street lights surplus back in 2010 when we changed all our street lights out to LED. That was when the start of the LED era. We bought a bunch of street lights, a bunch of street light arms. We bought 275 6-foot arms. We bought 275 4-foot arms. We had a bunch of 10-foot arms. We had in stock already. We bought them from, it was HD Supply back in 2010. Since then, they've been sold out to Annexter. We had 150 6-foot arms down at our supply yard for 10 years now. So I checked with the company we actually bought them from. They were not interested in buying them back. Our other supply company, Brownstown, talked to them. They would buy them back, or they would buy them for $25 a piece. There's 150 down there. We're going to keep 25. So I'd like to declare 125. I guess you would, Phil, would you declare that as surplus?
Well, yeah, surplus is no longer needed for city purposes.
If it comes up to $3,125, we'd get a credit from Brownstown, who we normally buy our supplies from. That's the only chance we're going to get. We're not going to use them any. They're just going to lay down there. They've been there 10 years. So I figure it's $3,000 I can put back into the system.
Scrap's not that valuable, so you may as well
No.
take them.
Back in 2010, we paid $42.32 for them.
That's pretty good. $25 for them.
And that's the only kind of, I mean, we only deal with 2 companies really that we deal with. One, since they got bought out, they have no interest in them. Other company said they would give us $25 a piece for them. We're going to keep 25 arms just in case we need them down the road. So we have 125 I'd like to declare surplus, so to speak.
125, the 6-footers or 4-footers? Or?
6-footers.
Do we have a motion to declare the 125 street light arms as the surplus items?
So moved.
Motion by McFerrin,
I'll second.
seconded by Ware. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
That should about do it.
What's the new one cost? Curiosity. Today.
I haven't had to check on one for a while.
I'm just curious.
I would say, I think it's around,
Yeah.
10 years ago, they were $42.
I think
Price
around
now, maybe.
$65, $70
I
now.
bet they're close to $75.
Yeah, about $70.
Okay.
Like I say, I haven't had any use for any, had to buy any.
Knock on wood.
All right, thank you, John.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Water Superintendent Meyerholtz.
Good evening.
Thank you, Gary.
We'll start off with distribution. The distribution people have been working on maintenance on the plant and some of our equipment. On Saturday, the 15th of February, we had a bank of a drainage ditch slide in, and it bowed 60 feet of pipe, opened up the joints, and we were losing water at the rate of about 350 gallon a minute. We looked for that Sunday and Monday, and the location and where it was, it didn't show up. Finally, the newest guy that we've got thought he smelled chlorine, so they started walking back in. That's how they found it. What it did was bowed 60 feet of pipe. So in order to solve the problem, we cut and capped the main off on both sides. And I think John and I are going to go out there and look at that Friday to see if we can see a good way to tie those back together, because right now we have 2 dead-ended mains. And with the size of the slip, I don't see an easy way to put that pipe back in service, but it's not a good idea to leave it dead-ended either, so.
There's no services
what we can-
along that area.
Right.
There's no services along there, it's just a completion of a loop.
Right. It completes a loop between Phoenix Drive and 22nd Street.
Down the hole.
It has improved. They did that about 10, 12 years ago, and really improved the quality of both those waters. So we need to put it back in service if we can figure out a way to do that. Estimated water loss over the 2.5 days was about 1.5 million gallons of water.
Gary, do you know, is that on state road right away, or do we have a separate?
That's on state road right away.
NDOT has been contacted.
NDOT has been contacted. They're supposed to send an inspector out to look at it and see what kind of solutions they can come up with, but I haven't heard from them as of yet. We have filed the permits to do the work, though, at least the work we've done so far. So
We can't keep them liable then, is it, if it's their property?
Well, we can't enter on to it without their consent. We can't do any improvements to it without their consent.
So, and it looks to me like the bank's going to keep giving away further and further. It broke off pretty good. Moving on to any other questions? No. The filter plant, our high demand day for the city was 1,900,000 gallons of water. Our high pumpage day out of the filter plant was 1,004,140 gallons. And we're starting to see some activity out there. I'll get into that in a minute. New metering system. We've been having some interference, usually affecting about 30 to 50 meters. They came in and cleaned some of that up. They found a antenna that was pushing in the same frequency that we're supposed to be in. They moved them out. We're now down to somewhere between 5 and 9 meters a day that are not reading like they really should be. They're going to come back in and see if I can clean the rest of that up a little bit later. Our system has 2,500, probably 20 or 30 meters in it. We are at 1,520 meters installed. Our next shipment of meters should be here the second week in March, and we'll start installing the next 500. So that once those get done, we'll be 2,000 out of 2,500, which will be pretty good.
Say we have 2,500. We have 2,500?
About 2,530 or so.
Give or take.
And then the upgrades, Machine Works is still putting sleeves underneath Main Street. I think they've got 2 more to go. They want to get all the sleeves put under from 2nd Avenue to the railroad before they start laying pipe. They're hoping to start laying pipe on the 2nd of March. Reynolds started delivering equipment to the plant, and they've actually had 3 people working there for the last 2 days. They're in the process of moving the transformer that powers the fiber optic hub for the entire city. And once they get that transformer moved, they can create a hole in the wall and start getting equipment into the filter plant where they have to put the new filters. They've had 3 people there. They're supposed to have a full crew there on the 2nd of March. And then Reynolds submitted their first claim. So if you have any questions about the project, that's why Mr. John Wetzel's here. Between the 2 of us, hopefully we can answer your questions. So any questions about the project?
I guess the question I would have is, John and Gary, it sounds like the reports that we're getting are that the project is moving according to, we're pretty much on schedule with where we're at this point,
Yeah.
what was expected.
Yeah, it's really just getting started.
Right.
But Huntingburg Machine Works, they started the week of January 20th, had to put their signs up around the city, completed that, and then since then, they've been working on those service line bores across the highway. That's pretty slow, tedious work. They are moving up very close to the railroad right now. I think for the most part, it's went okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, in a city like this, there's just a lot of other utilities that they're dealing with and trying to pothole and find out depths and doing their homework before they start drilling across. They'll really start in earnest next week with them starting a pipe laying crew, and their game plan is to start on the south side of the city, down there at Maple Street, and they'll begin to work their way with the pipe crew from south to north through the city. But again, that's going to be fairly slow moving, and just will take a lot of time to work their way northward.
And actually, the way they're putting the sleeves in, if we ever have a service line go bad on the opposite side of the main, we'll be able to pull that service out and put a new one in, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I was gonna point that out too. I think that's a great idea.
I mean, the benefit,
Is that gonna
Yeah.
be a copper, I assume, to pull them services copper, or is that plastic?
They will be copper, yes. That's all Huntingburg's ever put in, and I hate to change it. It's worked so well so far, so. Anything else?
I think, John mentioned it, but I think the cooperation between all, this is a project that's primarily the water department's project, but other utilities and other
Yep.
departments are affected by this, and I think across the board, and some of the work that John is doing, for example, is doing some inspections of, as we're into this project, there are other things being checked at and looked at as we go through, so I think the cooperation between the departments has gone very well as to making sure that any questions that are asked, or we've got the right people on scene and ready to move the project forward. So there's been a lot of good coordination between all the departments in keeping this thing going.
Yep, it's going very, very well so far.
Any questions for Gary or Mr. Wetzel?
Thank you.
Gary. Mr. Schneider, you have any items? Mr. Dipple?
No?
Do we have any other items from the council? Do we have any items from the floor? Hearing none? Motion by Kissling to adjourn. Second by Ware. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.